In a world that glorifies politeness and superficial harmony, the silent soul is often mistaken for the mature one. From childhood, we are taught that avoiding conflict is a virtue, that saying nothing is a form of emotional intelligence, and that letting things go makes us noble. But as Friedrich Nietzsche warned, such restraint often masks something more insidious: fear, powerlessness, and the internalization of a slave morality. The lie of polite silence. How many times have you swallowed your words to keep the peace? How often have you endured disrespect, humiliation, or injustice for the sake of harmony? According to Nietzsche, each act of silence that suppresses your authentic voice is not a sign of wisdom, but a betrayal of the self. What we often interpret as maturity or kindness is frequently fear in disguise, fear of disapproval, rejection, or being labeled difficult. Nietzsche argues that the culture of non-confrontation stems not from genuine virtue, but from weakness. In his work on the genealogy of morals, he exposes how moral systems that praise submission and humility were developed not by the powerful, but by the powerless. Unable to assert themselves in the world of strength, they inverted values, making what was once seen as weakness into virtue and strength into vice. Slave morality, a cultural legacy of fear. Nietzsche termed this inversion of values slave morality. Unlike the master morality of the noble and strong, rooted in courage, ambition, and the affirmation of life, slave morality is reactive. It thrives on self-denial, conformity, and quiet suffering. And far from being a thing of the past, it remains deeply embedded in modern behavior and language. Don't argue. Be nice. Don't make a scene. This moral framework teaches that to be good is to be harmless, to endure without complaint. But this passive endurance breeds something toxic: resentment. When the impulse to assert oneself is repressed, it doesn't vanish. It ferments, and that bitterness left unchecked erodes the soul from within. Resentment, the poison of the repressed will. Nietzsche's insight into resentment is among his most brutal and illuminating. Resentment arises when the will to act is stifled by fear. Those who long to speak out but remain silent, who yearn to set boundaries but hesitate, accumulate emotional poison. And this resentment doesn't simply affect the individual. It spreads, shaping passive-aggressive cultures and enabling cycles of abuse. Even worse, many start to frame their inaction as moral superiority. I am better because I forgive. I am stronger because I do not react. But these declarations often conceal powerlessness. Resentment is not noble, it is a corrosive force. It traps us in cycles of bitterness and victimhood, convincing us that peace is found in suffering. Nietzsche insists, true peace requires confrontation, not for the sake of destruction, but for the sake of authenticity. The will to power, a path to liberation. To escape this trap, Nietzsche introduces a liberating concept: the will to power. Often misunderstood as a desire for domination, it is in fact the essence of life's striving to grow, assert, and create. The will to power is the impulse that moves the seed to sprout, the child to explore, the individual to become who they truly are. But this vital force is stifled by slave morality. We're told not to stand out, not to challenge, not to confront. The result is a life half-lived, a person domesticated by fear. Nietzsche's call is clear: reclaim your will to power. Say no when necessary. Assert your boundaries. Confront not to destroy, but to be real. The metamorphosis of the spirit, camel, lion, and child Nietzsche, outlines a symbolic journey of transformation in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, identifying 3 stages of the spirit. The camel carries burdens, the expectations of society, the rules of politeness, and the fear of confrontation. It is the stage of obedience and silent endurance. The lion emerges when the spirit revolts against these burdens. It says no to servitude, dares to confront, and reclaims the right to exist on its own terms. It faces the great dragon of societal expectations, the thou shalt. The child is the final stage. Free from both oppression and rebellion, it represents creative freedom. The child no longer reacts, it invents. It plays, creates, and lives joyfully from a place of inner truth. This journey from camel to lion to child is the path to authentic selfhood. Becoming who you are. Nietzsche's ultimate challenge is profound. Become who you are. This is not a call to indulge whims, but to discover and live your truth, even when it means conflict. Confrontation, in Nietzsche's view, is not an obstacle to harmony. It is the birthplace of identity. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you drift further from yourself. Every time you avoid conflict to please others, a part of you dies. But the reward for choosing courage over compliance is immense. A life of integrity, creativity, and genuine peace. Not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of authenticity. The silence that complicates. The final warning is stark. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Your refusal to set boundaries does not protect you. It invites further harm. People sense when you're afraid to assert yourself, and those with bad intentions exploit it. Your silence teaches others how to treat you. Breaking this cycle starts with a simple but revolutionary act: speaking up. Not out of anger, but from a deep commitment to truth and self-respect. I choose to no longer remain silent. Let these words be your first step toward the life Nietzsche envisioned. A life of self-mastery, creative power, and unshakable authenticity.